If this story were to be a fairy tale, our protagonist, Kotaro, would definitely not be the hero of the story. This is what Kotaro always believed, until that fateful day. A few days earlier, in the bustling classroom, someone called out to Ryuzaki. They asked if he wanted to go shopping for swimsuits with them. Ryuzaki laughed and said it was only May, which he thought was too early for swimsuits. Ryuzaki Ryoma would definitely be the main character if this was a fairy tale world. It was Azusa who called out to Ryuzaki, and she told Ryuzaki that she wanted him to see her in a swimsuit soon. Another girl with straight black hair chimed in, agreeing with Azusa, saying she had grown a lot since last year and her old swimsuit didn't fit anymore. A blonde girl then joined the conversation, suggesting that they all go swimsuit shopping together. Listening to all this and seeing the girls all gathered around Ryuzaki, Kotaro sighed tiredly. His life felt like a simple, everyday drama, but Ryuzaki's life seemed like a romantic comedy. It wasn't always this way, and Kotaro never thought it would end up this way. Those three girls used to be close to Kotaro. When high school started, they slowly drifted away from him. Azusa, who is Kotaro's little sister, began to admire Ryuzaki a lot. She even started calling him Big Brother in a loving way. Even though Azusa and Kotaro aren't really related by blood, he always treated her like a real brother. Yuzuki, the second girl with black hair, was Kotaro's childhood friend. But when she fell in love with Ryuzaki, she started avoiding Kotaro. Yuzuki, once self-conscious about her chest size, now confidently flaunts it as a weapon of mass destruction. Kirari used to be one of Kotaro's closest friends. She loved reading but gave it up and changed herself just to be close to Ryuzaki. Kotaro thought about this and wondered if things would be different if he had made different choices with these girls, but he knew that would never happen. Ryuzaki was the main character, and Kotaro knew he could never become the protagonist of this story. He was just a background guy. That's what Kotaro thought as he watched Ryuzaki grab all the attention effortlessly. Then, Ryuzaki turned to another girl and asked her to come shopping with them. It was clear that Ryuzaki didn't want just 3 girls in his harem. He wanted more. The girl who had been dozing off finally woke up and asked what was going on. Ryuzaki explained that he and his harem were going swimsuit shopping and invited her too. This girl was Shiho Shimatsuki, Ryuzaki's childhood friend. She always had a serious look on her face, which might seem unfriendly, but that's just how she was. She never laughed or smiled and talked very little. But still, no one disliked her. In fact, she seemed like a princess from a fairy tale. Kotaro always thought that Ryuzaki might have special feelings for Shiho, and he thought that she was fit to be the perfect main heroine of this story. Kotaro was lost in thought when he noticed Shiho looking at him. Kotaro's eyes widened and he was confused. He thought that Shiho was actually looking at him, but he quickly figured it must be his imagination. When school ended, Kotaro headed home. Lying in his bed, he was wondering if Ryuzaki and the girls were enjoying their shopping trip. He suddenly got back to reality, and decided to not waste any more time and start with his homework. As he looked in his backpack, he realized he couldn't find his notes. He was annoyed at his own stupidity, and decided to go back to school to get them. When he got there, he found Shiho still in the classroom sitting on her desk. Kotaro was confused for a bit, and then he tried calling out her name, but he did not get any response. He wondered what to say and thought why she did not go shopping with Ryuzaki and the others. He moved closer to her and finally realized that Shiho was actually sleeping. Kotaro could not believe it, and he kept staring at her face for a while. He suddenly broke out of the trance and thought he should just leave. He checked the time and saw it was getting late. He wondered if Shiho would be alright walking home alone at this time, and it would be really bad if she encountered some creep. He thought about waking her up. After a moment's hesitation, Kotaro decided to gently wake Shiho. Just as he reached out, a curtain fluttered down and covered her. He moved quickly to remove the curtain, accidentally touching and waking her up in the process. Shiho stared at him calmly as she realized who was in front of her. Kotaro hurriedly assured Shiho that he wasn't trying to play a prank on her and started to leave quickly. As Shiho tried to chase after him, she collided with some chairs, making Kotaro rush back to ask if she was all right. To his surprise, Shiho reached out and grabbed his hands and they stared at each other intently. Shiho smiled at him, while Kotaro looked really shocked, still in disbelief at this situation. The moment felt strangely tense. It looked as if Shiho was checking something in Kotaro's hand while still holding it. Kotaro was confused, but Shiho started to smile brightly, saying that she can speak without any nervousness. Shiho's eyes sparkled with joy as she told Kotaro that she usually felt nervous around others, which was why she was so quiet. But, she admitted, she felt strangely comfortable and unguarded around him. Feeling grateful for his understanding, Shiho asked Kotaro a heartfelt favor. She asked him if he would like to become her friend. The next morning, Kotaro woke up with Shiho's unexpected request still on his mind. Feeling optimistic, he thinks today will be a good day. After arriving at school, he is warmly greeted by his friend Hanakishi. Meanwhile, Ryuzaki effortlessly charms his group of admirers, leaving Kotaro and Hanakishi wondering how someone like Ryuzaki, despite being handsome, manages to maintain such popularity. Reflecting on the dynamics at play, Kotaro concludes that Ryuzaki's charisma and confident demeanor are akin to that of a protagonist in a romantic comedy. Shiho enters the classroom, her expression serious as usual, prompting Hanakishi to comment on her demeanor. Kotaro thought that for ordinary boys like him and his friend, Shiho was someone to be feared, but Kotaro still could not believe that he became friends with this girl. Even his friend agrees that Shiho was too cute and anyone would be really nervous being around her. Kotaro thought that Shiho and him live in completely different worlds. Kotaro considers the possibility that if Shiho starts conversing with him more often, he might inadvertently become the center of attention himself. With this in mind, he decides to be really careful. During lunch break, Kotaro notices Shiho looking visibly upset about something. He approaches her to ask about it, but Shiho interrupts him and asks if they are friends. Kotaro agrees and Shiho asks why he avoids talking to her. Shiho looked really determined and she told him that if he considers her a friend, then he should talk to her. Kotaro explains that he's hesitant because she's shy and he doesn't want to draw attention in public, which might make her uncomfortable. Shiho started to blush as she realized how Kotaro was really thoughtful. However, Shiho brushes off his concerns, urging him to talk to her regardless of others. Expressing her worry that he might not enjoy being friends with her, Kotaro quickly reassures Shiho, apologizing and admitting that he could never dislike her. Touched by his sincerity, Shiho suggests they start addressing each other by their first names as a sign of their close friendship. Kotaro hesitates at first but eventually calls her Shiho, which causes her to blush. She tries to hide her face while trying to open her lunchbox. She started to feel really embarrassed and thought if it was too early to call each other by their first names. She turns towards Kotaro and says that she will call him by his first name once she is calmed down. Feeling hungry, Shiho proposes they eat at a secluded spot at the back of the school where they won't be seen. They find a quiet spot and settle down for lunch. Shiho notices Kotaro only has a simple bread for lunch. She tells him that it's not a balanced diet, and she offers to share her beautifully prepared lunch with him. Initially embarrassed by her generosity, Kotaro hesitates to accept, but Shiho insists, playfully teasing him and feeding him small bites until he relents. Kotaro was embarrassed and thought if this was too much, or if this much intimacy was normal for Shiho. He eventually admits that her cooking is delicious, which makes Shiho blush again. In reality, Kotaro was so nervous that he could not even taste anything. Realizing her own bold actions, Shiho starts feeling embarrassed but is secretly happy to have shared such a personal moment with Kotaro. His genuine happiness and smile make her realize that she can make someone like him, who considers himself just a background character, smile again. Playfully, Shiho teases Kotaro about his racing heart when she fed him earlier. He tries to deny it, but she mentions she can actually hear his heartbeat. Kotaro remembers what Shiho told him the day before in class. The previous day, Shiho shared something special with Kotaro. She can hear sounds that other people can't. She explains that every person makes a unique sound. Kind people make clear, pleasant sounds, while scary people make noises like nails on a chalkboard. From the sound that people emit, Shiho could judge a person's nature and feelings. It's similar to how some people say they can see sounds or hear colors. It sounds interesting, but Shiho says it's not always a good thing. She can hear both nice, gentle feelings and darker, unsettling emotions like jealousy and lust. This constant barrage of emotions can be overwhelming for her. Shiho says that it was a work of fate when they met. She explains that she is as sensitive as an assassin even when she is sleeping, and she could not believe that she did not wake up until he touched her that day. To Shiho, Kotaro's sound does not make her nervous, and it is like chirping birds and a flowing river, which she finds calming. This is why she feels so comfortable around him. She also mentions that this is how she knew he was nervous earlier. Kotaro, feeling embarrassed, tries to brush it off by saying that it was not fate and Ryuzaki is always with her more than him. But Shiho disagrees, saying Ryuzaki's sound is unpleasant to her. Their deep conversation is cut short by Ryuzaki's voice. He was asking someone why she called him out there so suddenly. Kotaro realized that it's Azusa, and she says she has something important to tell him. Hearing them getting closer, Shiho decides to hide. But before she can, Ryuzaki spots her and demands to know what she's doing there. Then he notices Kotaro and arrogantly asks who he is and what he's doing with Shiho. Ryuzaki questions why Kotaro brought Shiho to an empty place and asks what he was doing with his precious childhood friend. Kotaro, on the other hand, is perplexed about why both Ryuzaki and Azusa are in this secluded area. He starts to speculate if something significant was about to happen. Ryuzaki suddenly seems indifferent to Azusa's presence, shrugs her away, and focuses on asking if Shiho is okay. Despite Azusa having forgotten about Kotaro and often avoiding him, he still feels a sense of responsibility, as her brother. Kotaro quickly realizes that Azusa has brought Ryuzaki here to confess her feelings to him, but it's painfully clear that Ryuzaki only has eyes for Shiho. This realization hits Kotaro hard, as he reflects on how, despite his efforts, he couldn't become the brother Azusa dreamed of. He decides that he shouldn't get in the way of her love life, no matter how much it might hurt him to stand aside. With a calm voice, Kotaro responds to Ryuzaki's question, assuring him that he didn't do anything to Shiho. Kotaro tells Shiho to leave, but Shiho, on the other hand, is already feeling nervous and uncomfortable. Kotaro asks if she is okay, but Shiho grabbed his hand and tries to speak, but she could not muster up the courage. Kotaro remembered what Shiho told him about Ryuzaki, and he understood that Shiho felt really uncomfortable with Ryuzaki. Ryuzaki steps forward, trying to grab Shiho's arm, but Kotaro quickly intervenes, saying he'll take her to the infirmary, and he tells Ryuzaki to get out of the way. Ryuzaki, now acting aggressive, retorts that it's Kotaro's fault that Shiho is feeling sick, insinuating that he must have done something to upset her. Maintaining his composure, Kotaro insists that he didn't do anything to cause Shiho's discomfort. Shiho, trying to defuse the situation, assures Kotaro that she's okay and can go to the infirmary alone. However, Ryuzaki disregards her wishes and instead instructs Azusa to take Shiho to the infirmary, completely ignoring the fact that Azusa had something important to discuss with him. Noticing Azusa's dejected expression, Kotaro attempts to inform Ryuzaki that Azusa has something significant to tell him, but the blockhead remains adamant. He insists that Azusa takes Shiho to the infirmary because he wants to have a word with Kotaro. Azusa, despite her own feelings and the urgency of her confession, reluctantly agrees and helps Shiho toward the infirmary. Kotaro feels really worried for Azusa, but he knows that Shiho's well-being must come first. Once they are alone, Kotaro turns to Ryuzaki and tries to reassure him that he didn't do anything to Shiho, emphasizing that there's no need for concern. Kotaro asks why he is so concerned about him, saying that he is not even her boyfriend. Ryuzaki asserts that they aren't a couple yet, but she is his childhood friend and it's his duty to protect her. He says that Shiho is a misunderstood girl whom nobody truly understands except for him. Ryuzaki asserts that Shiho is a weak girl who needs help and he is the only one who can help her. As Ryuzaki speaks, Kotaro flashes back to all the moments he spent with Shiho, realizing that Ryuzaki simply doesn't grasp who Shiho truly is. Despite Shiho's usual shy and nervous personality, Kotaro knows she's just an ordinary girl beneath it all. She is not so weak that she can't live without any help. Kotaro wonders if all protagonists in romantic comedies are as naive as Ryuzaki, with a twisted perception that the world revolves around them. To Kotaro, Ryuzaki embodies the flaws of a bad harem protagonist, someone who sees others only in terms of their convenience. In an effort to dispel Ryuzaki's suspicion and hostility towards him, Kotaro wonders how he could get rid of his hostility towards him. Kotaro decides to play the role of a random background character. Kotaro understood that Ryuzaki is anxious because of him, and he is getting really impatient. Kotaro realized that he has to make himself insignificant in Ryuzaki's mind. He tells Ryuzaki what he wants to hear, fabricating a story about finding Shiho cute and trying to confess to her, only for Shiho to reject him without a second thought. Kotaro continues the fabrication, saying he suggested starting as friends instead, but Shiho claimed to be unwell and left. As expected, Ryuzaki pats himself on the back before advising Kotaro to give up pursuing Shiho to avoid getting hurt. He then casually suggests that he and Kotaro should also start as friends, admitting he didn't even know Kotaro's name, a fact that even Shiho knew. Despite his inner resentment at playing down his own worth, Kotaro agrees to be Ryuzaki's friend for Shiho's sake and watches as Ryuzaki departs. Even though Kotaro dislikes diminishing himself and acting like a background character, he believes it's necessary because he sees himself as just a mob character and wants to protect Shiho from any further complications. Ever since that day, Ryuzaki has been talking to Kotaro more often. He frequently asks how things are going with Shiho. Kotaro always says he doesn't want to push her too much or seem too persistent. In reality, he's been avoiding Shiho so Ryuzaki won't get suspicious. After school, as he heads home, Kotaro reflects on the situation. He thought that Ryuzaki must be feeling relieved now, and he would be less vigilant tomorrow. He thinks that Ryuzaki doesn't need to worry about him. Ever since childhood, Kotaro has always been in the background. He couldn't even think of himself as the protagonist of his own life. He has always been in the corner, always living a flimsy life of a supporting character in someone else's story. When he became a high school student, it became quite obvious as the girls he was close to previously left him. He was just living a lonely and boring life. Kotaro thought that the reason he was living this boring life was because he was just a side character in Ryuzaki's story. He felt like a character that is meant to push the real protagonist, who was Ryuzaki. He believed that Ryuzaki's story would be about a harem protagonist who is tempted by all kinds of girls but loves only his childhood friend with all his heart. It feels ridiculous, but it was true that as soon as the three girls who were Kotaro's friends met Ryuzaki at the school ceremony, their personality changed all of a sudden. Kotaro knew that their love won't mean anything, and he believes the story will end with Ryuzaki and Shiho together. Even though Azusa and others might have feelings for him, Kotaro feels their love won't lead anywhere. Deep in thought, Kotaro gets on the bus. Kotaro felt that he could not do anything other than to just stall the story. Even though Shiho told him to talk to her, he can't risk it because Ryuzaki would get suspicious. Suddenly, he hears someone asking for help. Turning around, he sees Shiho asking him for help. She explains that she saw him leaving school and tried to catch up but forgot her wallet in class. She thanks him for paying her bus fare and calls him a hero. Humbly, he says he's just a background character, but she disagrees. She tells him he's a good guy who likes helping people and that he has many good qualities. She then says if he can't pat himself on the head, she'll do it for him. She pats his head and tells him not to call himself a background character again. Shiho held Kotaro's hand and assures him that he is a good person. Kotaro had always felt that Shiho is too good for him, and he felt inferior to her special presence. Shiho told him to not berate himself so much while Kotaro started to blush. He felt that Shiho's kind words were all he needed, and he felt like his importance grew a little. Shiho then asked if Kotaro would show her his house, saying that it was her dream to hang out at her friend's house. Shiho follows Kotaro home and compliments his living room. Kotaro tells her his parents are not home, and she can make herself comfortable. He asks if she'd like tea or juice, and she chooses juice. She then asks when his parents are coming back because she wants to introduce herself as his friend. He wonders if she can do that since she's usually shy, but she confidently says she can. He tells her his parents are on a business trip, and she concludes that he lives alone. She then offers to spoil him whenever he wants, claiming she's a good big sister. Kotaro had other feelings on his mind but decides to stay quiet. Looking at her size, Kotaro felt she was more like his little sister. They sit down in the living room and start chatting. Shiho pretends to be his big sister, but in reality, Kotaro feels differently. He decides to just go with the flow. Shiho points out that they have a problem as she looks at the snack bowl and cutely says there are no sweets left for him. Kotaro says there is one piece left and tells her she can have it. After their snack break, Shiho suddenly says it's now time to do that thing. Kotaro is confused, but Shiho casually asks where his room is. As soon as Kotaro points her in the direction, Shiho gets excited and rushes to the room. She notices the many books and asks if he likes reading. Kotaro agrees. Shiho admits she doesn't read much. She is all about anime and games. She says her dream is to play games with her friends. She asks if Kotaro likes to play games. Kotaro says he doesn't play games and apologizes if his room is boring. Shiho reassures him that she doesn't find it boring. She says she is interested in him and wants to know what type of person he is and what he likes. She says she wants to know what he thinks and doesn't care how fun the room is. Shiho smiles, saying that if he thinks his room is boring, she can bring some games to make it fun. He says he looks forward to it but reminds her that they wouldn't have time to play games because midterms are coming up. She gets shocked and insists that a student's job is to play games. She says it doesn't matter if there is an exam, and she doesn't want to do such a boring chore. She then says she'll study if he teaches her. Kotaro is surprised at the request, and thinks it will be boring to study with a mob character like him teaching the main heroine. He agrees to the request, and Shiho gets excited, saying that it means she would get to stay with him a lot. Shiho asks if he would study with her at school too. She tells him not to ignore her in school like he did today. Kotaro tries to think of what to say, but Shiho suddenly interrupts him and asks if he lives alone. She hears the sound of footsteps outside and asks him about it. Meanwhile, Azusa is outside the house, announcing her arrival. Shiho looks sad and called Kotaro a cheater, saying she didn't know he already had a girlfriend. Kotaro was confused at first but then realized Shiho must have thought he was an only child living in this house. Shiho felt miserable and said it was hard knowing her friend had a girlfriend. Kotaro realized Shiho must have heard Azusa's footsteps and assumed they were a girl's footsteps. Feeling nervous, Kotaro told Shiho to relax and said he would introduce Azusa to her. Kotaro went outside and called Azusa, asking if they could talk for a bit. He explained that he had a friend over and asked if he could introduce her. Azusa was surprised, saying it was unusual, but she agreed. Shiho casually walked into the room and was shocked to see who Kotaro's friend was. Azusa screamed, saying there was no way Shiho was Kotaro's friend. Shiho screamed in panic too, realizing it was Azusa, her classmate. Kotaro tried to calm Shiho down and explain, but Shiho felt dejected and interrupted him, saying she got it. She reluctantly told Kotaro he found a cute girl while she was away. It was a big misunderstanding. Kotaro tried to calm her down, and finally explained that Azusa was his stepsister. Shiho was still in shock and said that must mean Azusa was his girlfriend. Kotaro tried to explain it was nothing like that, but Shiho wasn't listening. Azusa asked him what Shiho was talking about, and Kotaro explained that Shiho thought Azusa and he were dating. Kotaro asked Azusa to clear things up. Azusa explained to Shiho that they were just family, and she was not Kotaro's girlfriend. Shiho finally calmed down and said they did seem a bit distant towards each other, realizing she misunderstood the situation. Meanwhile, Kotaro and Azusa were speechless. Shiho realized what she had been thinking and buried her face in a pillow out of extreme embarrassment. Kotaro tried to call her, but she didn't want to move. Shiho apologized for being impolite while still burying her face in the pillow. Kotaro offered to walk her out if she wanted to leave, but Shiho told him not to worry and just leave her for now. Shiho ran out of the house as fast as she could, still hiding her face, and took the pillow with her. Kotaro closed the door behind her and noticed Azusa standing there. Azusa asked if Shiho was okay, and Kotaro explained that Shiho told him her mom would pick her up. Azusa said she didn't know he and Shiho interacted at all. Azusa remembered seeing them together during lunch break that day and was surprised. Kotaro, feeling embarrassed, explained that they had been getting along a bit better recently. The conversation between Kotaro and Azusa felt awkward after 2 months of not interacting at all. Kotaro thought maybe Azusa was asking about Shiho because she was worried. He tried to explain, but Azusa interrupted, saying she was wondering if Ryuzaki knew about this. Azusa felt cold as ever, and Kotaro's mind started racing as he thought about the cleanest way to exit this precarious situation. Kotaro knew that Azusa liked Ryuzaki and that Ryuzaki's true love was Shiho. No matter how much Azusa and the others tried to win him over, Ryuzaki wouldn't even consider their feelings. Kotaro felt that Azusa now knew about Shiho interacting with a boy other than Ryuzaki and might see it as a great opportunity to snitch to Ryuzaki. Kotaro realized there was a possibility Ryuzaki would become even more involved with Shiho because of this situation. He knew Azusa was blindly devoted to Ryuzaki and wouldn't listen to him. More concerned about Shiho than anything else, Kotaro quickly bowed to Azusa and apologized. He pleaded with her to keep this to herself, saying he couldn't explain the details now, but Ryuzaki shouldn't know about this. He bowed harder, begging Azusa not to say anything. Azusa tried to calm him down, asking why he was acting so flustered. She said she didn't understand the situation but agreed to keep it a secret if that's what Kotaro wanted. Kotaro was surprised at first, but Azusa explained that this wouldn't change what she really wanted. Azusa smiled and said she only wanted to work hard to make Ryuzaki fall in love with her. Kotaro felt the conviction in her words and was surprised to see Azusa smile after a long time. He thought maybe he had underestimated her love. Unlike him, Azusa was facing Ryuzaki fairly and was straightforward with her feelings. Kotaro realized he had misunderstood Azusa and felt like a failure as a big brother. He apologized to her again, but Azusa was confused why he was apologizing so much. Azusa said she was going back to her room now and told Kotaro she would give it her best shot and that he should do the same. Kotaro was surprised to see this side of her and thanked her. He genuinely wished for Azusa to give her best and felt that even though he was a failure as a big brother, he would always be wishing for her happiness. Meanwhile, Azusa went to her room and thought that even though she had said such terrible things, Kotaro still acted like a big brother to her. Before their parents got married, Azusa had a biological older brother who was always by her side. She relied on him more than anyone else. But one day, he disappeared from her life. Azusa waited day after day for his return, but, as a child, she didn't realize what had really happened to her brother. She thought her brother wouldn't come back because she wasn't a good girl. Even her father couldn't explain to her what had happened. From that moment on, Azusa couldn't move on and felt as if time had completely stopped for her. She kept her appearance the same as that day, hoping that when her brother came back, he would easily recognize her. Her father remarried, hoping that Azusa would feel better, but it didn't happen. Kotaro tried to meet her expectations by playing the role of a big brother. However, Azusa didn't feel the same way and felt distant. At that time, Ryuzaki, who looked exactly like her brother, appeared before her. Azusa did not dislike Kotaro, but after meeting Ryuzaki, she fell in love with him as if being drawn to him by an irresistible force, to the point where she could no longer see anything else around her. Azusa knew what would happen if she snitched about Shiho and Kotaro to Ryuzaki. She still felt she had to keep Kotaro's word since he was so nice to her even when she did not act the same way towards him. She felt Kotaro's kindness and decided not to take advantage of it. She promised herself she wouldn't say anything to Ryuzaki and felt really sorry for acting this way towards Kotaro. One bright and sunny morning in the park, Shiho had a brilliant idea. She suggested to Kotaro that they should play baseball. She'd been playing a baseball video game lately and found it super exciting, so naturally, she wanted to try the real deal. Kotaro, a bit puzzled but unable to resist Shiho's contagious enthusiasm, decided to roll with it. Shiho, with a big grin, pulled out a rubber ball. Kotaro couldn't help but ask if she was sure about that choice. But Shiho, practically bouncing with excitement, confidently announced that she'd start with a curveball. She gripped the ball like a pro, and Kotaro, seeing her determination, assumed she had it all figured out. Kotaro braced himself, glove ready, expecting some tricky pitch. But as soon as Shiho let the ball fly, the ball hit the ground, not even making it halfway to Kotaro. Shiho let out an annoyed scream. Her big moment deflated as the ball thudded flat on the grass. Kotaro had actually been looking forward to playing more. It seemed like it was going to be a blast. But now, he worried Shiho might be too disappointed to keep going. Shiho's cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she tried to explain that she had curved the ball too much. Kotaro, ever the supportive friend, assured her it was a nice throw. Suddenly, Shiho's mood flipped. Her confidence shot through the roof, and she jokingly apologized for being too talented, claiming maybe she was just really amazing after all. They swapped roles, and Kotaro took his turn to pitch. Shiho got ready to catch, but instead of snagging the ball, it bonked her right on the head. Kotaro immediately apologized, worried, but Shiho just smiled sweetly, insisting she was fine. Despite the mishaps and the occasional disappointment, they kept playing. By the end of it, Shiho admitted that baseball wasn't so bad once in a while, and Kotaro couldn't help but agree. While Shiho was happily engrossed in her phone, probably raising yet another digital horse, Kotaro decided to drop a bombshell of an idea. He suggested that they should start studying. Shiho's reaction was immediate. She blinked at him in pure confusion, not ready to process such a shocking proposal. In a quick defense, Shiho held up her phone and explained that she was already on an educational website, multitasking between learning and, of course, taking care of her digital horse. Kotaro, not easily convinced, insisted they should hit the books, using their actual learning materials, and buckle down on their schoolwork. Shiho shrugged nonchalantly, making it clear she wasn't a fan of the whole studying thing. She boldly declared that she hated studying and didn't see the point. Schoolwork seemed totally useless for the future. If she was going to do something pointless, she figured she might as well play on her phone. At least that way she'd have more fun. But Kotaro, clever as ever, decided to sweeten the deal. He mentioned cake. Shiho immediately perked up. All thoughts of studying vanished from her mind as her eyes widened and her mouth practically watered at the thought of what deliciousness could be inside the box. She reached out eagerly, her curiosity getting the better of her, wondering what kind of cake it could be. Just as her fingers were about to make contact, Kotaro snapped her out of her trance, reminding her that the cake was meant for a snack break after they studied. The realization hit Shiho like a ton of bricks. She was being lured into studying with the promise of cake. Quickly, she pulled her hand back, not wanting to fall into such an obvious trap. With a pout, Shiho declared that she didn't want Kotaro to think she was as easy to manipulate as a cute little puppy. Kotaro, amused, smiled and assured her that he understood. But inside, Shiho couldn't help but worry. What if Kotaro started disliking her if she kept slacking off? But she needn't have worried. Kotaro could never dislike her. Trying to make the studying session a bit easier, Kotaro asked if there was anything from the materials she didn't understand. Shiho sighed dramatically and admitted that she didn't understand anything. With a defeated look, she said they'd have to start right from the beginning. After what felt like an eternity of studying, the moment had finally arrived, snack break. As they enjoyed their long-awaited treat, Shiho brought up something that had been bothering her. She mentioned how they barely talked at school, which had been on her mind for a while. Kotaro, looking a bit guilty, apologized and explained that he couldn't risk attracting Ryozaki's attention. Shiho understood, knowing it was all for her sake, so she decided to endure the silence. Besides, the cake was really good, which made things a bit better. A few days earlier, Kotaro had told Shiho everything about Ryozaki, and ever since that day, whenever Kotaro ran into Ryozaki behind the gym, he had been relentless in interfering with him. This had started to take a toll on Shiho's anxiety. She understood the situation and knew it couldn't be helped, but it didn't make it any easier. She really wished they could chat at school, too, but she decided to put up with it. Shiho, trying to lighten the mood, suggested a trade-off. In exchange for not talking at school, she wanted Kotaro to pay a lot of attention to her afterward. She admitted that she was much lonelier than he might think. Kotaro promised he would, adding that he felt at ease just having her by his side. Shiho, feeling reassured, confided in him that she felt the same way. That was why she acted like a spoiled child around him and asked him not to find it bothersome. Normally, if any other girl had told Kotaro that he was more than just a background character, he would have believed it. But with Shiho, it was different. He could accept that feeling wholeheartedly. Shiho was a blessing in his life. There was no way Shiho could ever be bothersome to him. She was usually distant and cold with everyone else, but with Kotaro, she always smiled and seemed genuinely happy. There was no way Kotaro wouldn't be happy about that. Days turned into weeks as Kotaro and Shiho diligently studied for their exams. Finally, the big day arrived. As the exam started, Kotaro caught Shiho's eye and mouthed, "Good luck." That small gesture encouraged her, and she felt a little boost of confidence as she dived into her exam. A few days later, the results were in. Shiho nervously approached the teacher to get her test paper. She slowly unfolded the paper, heart pounding, and was relieved to see that she had passed. She glanced over at Kotaro, who responded with a reassuring smile. Just then, a gust of wind blew the curtain over Shiho's head, and she was instantly reminded of the first time they truly met. The memory brought a warm feeling to her heart, and she couldn't help but smile. While Kotaro was busy comforting Hanakishi over his disappointing exam results, he felt a tap on his back. Turning around, he found Shiho holding up her own test paper with a look of pleasant surprise. She had scored 72 points. Kotaro was almost certain she was going to fail, but here she was, proudly boasting that she could pass tests just fine if she actually tried. Kotaro couldn't help but laugh and congratulate her on a job well done. Shiho twirled a strand of hair between her fingers, playfully remarking that she was only able to do her best because of Kotaro's encouragement. Then, she suddenly remembered that she had to brag to her mom about this achievement, so she quickly excused herself to make a call. Before leaving, she mentioned that she wanted to celebrate with Kotaro later, leaving him to think about where they could go, perhaps her favorite cake shop near the station. However, as Kotaro turned back to the classroom, he noticed everyone was staring at him. Hanakishi, still sulking over his grade, asked Kotaro when he got so close to Shiho, especially since he'd never seen her smile like that before. The entire class began murmuring and gossiping, speculating about the nature of Kotaro and Shiho's relationship. Things quickly escalated when Ryuzaki himself appeared, grabbing Kotaro by the shoulder. Kotaro's heart sank as he followed Ryuzaki to the music prep room. Taking a deep breath, he reminded himself to stay calm. He was just a background character, an NPC in this story. As they entered the room, Kotaro asked Ryuzaki what was going on. Ryuzaki, not beating around the bush, sat down and bluntly asked Kotaro what he had done to Shiho. Kotaro tried to explain that all he did was ask Shiho about her test score, and she was simply happy because she did well. But Ryuzaki wasn't buying it. He knew Shiho well enough to understand that she only smiled at people she genuinely trusted. Even he, her childhood friend, had only seen her smile once as a kid, and he always thought that was because he was special to her. Yet here was Kotaro, somehow able to make her smile, which to Ryuzaki meant that Kotaro was a threat. Kotaro attempted to play dumb, but Ryozaki's sharp eyes didn't miss a thing. He could see that Shiho had warmed up to Kotaro, while he himself always got the cold shoulder. Ryuzaki began blaming himself for neglecting her, and Kotaro could sense the situation spiraling out of his control. The tension in the room was palpable, and when Kotaro accidentally bumped into a metronome, its rhythmic ticking only added to the atmosphere. Ryuzaki then made a declaration that sent a chill down Kotaro's spine. He was no longer content with being just Shiho's childhood friend. Ryuzaki had realized that he, too, had feelings for her. This was the worst-case scenario that Kotaro had been trying to avoid. From now on, Ryuzaki was going to pursue Shiho, not just as a friend, but as a man. It was now a showdown between them. Kotaro's mind raced as he tried to figure out how to protect Shiho from this looming conflict. Just as the tension reached its peak, someone called out his name, breaking the spell. As Kotaro turned to leave, Ryuzaki called out to him again, but this time, he wasn't just addressing him as a friend. He extended his hand, not in friendship, but as a rival in the battle for Shiho's affections. Kotaro steps off the bus with a heavy heart, and a look of regret etched on his face. Earlier, Ryuzaki had dropped a bombshell. He declared that he would confess his feelings to Shiho during the school trip. Kotaro had tried to dissuade him, thinking it was too soon. He believed in taking the time to truly know someone before making such a big move. But Ryuzaki, who had been Shiho's childhood friend, claimed he knew her well enough already. To him, Kotaro was now a full-fledged rival, and he expected a fair competition without any underhanded tricks. Despite Kotaro's efforts to change Ryuzaki's mind, it was clear that Ryuzaki had already made his decision. Instead of backing down, Ryuzaki had issued a challenge, a contest to see who Shiho would choose during the trip. Kotaro immediately regretted his choice of words, realizing they had only fueled Ryuzaki's competitive spirit. His usual timidity and passiveness had backfired spectacularly. Ryuzaki, confident and sure of himself, seemed propelled forward by the very plot that was leaving side characters like Kotaro behind in the dust. Kotaro couldn't help but feel that he had failed, and now he was left wondering how he should face Shiho. As he made his way to the front steps of a staircase, Kotaro spotted Shiho waiting for him. He asked what she was doing there, and she simply told him to sit down. Without hesitation, Kotaro obeyed, taking a seat on a nearby bench. Shiho, sensing his distress, began to comfort him, even though she didn't know exactly what was bothering him. What she did know was that she wanted to be by his side, and that was enough for her. She gently urged him to tell her what had happened, reminding him that he was important to her. Kotaro was struck by how well she understood him, even without him having to say a word. She always seemed to know exactly what to say at just the right time, and her gentleness was almost overwhelming. Kotaro finally opened up and told Shiho about his conversation with Ryuzaki after she had left. Shiho, sharp as ever, quickly figured out that Ryuzaki intended to confess to her. She had already guessed as much, knowing Ryuzaki's feelings weren't exactly subtle. She wasn't as oblivious as Ryuzaki. She had seen this day coming for a while now. Despite her efforts to gently signal that she wasn't interested, It seemed Ryuzaki either didn't pick up on it or chose to ignore it. But now, she knew it was time to face him properly. Kotaro, feeling guilty, blamed himself for underestimating Shiho's resolve. He apologized, admitting that he had tried to handle things on his own to keep her from getting entangled with Ryuzaki. But now, he offered his help, promising to do whatever he could for the sake of their friendship. Shiho, smiling warmly, told him that all she needed was for him to stay by her side. That was more than enough for her. What she really wanted was to enjoy the school trip together. Then, with a playful glint in her eye, she reminded him that he had missed her celebration party after she scored 72 points on the exam. For that, she declared, he deserved a punishment. She was going to play with him until his face turned as red as a tomato with embarrassment. Kotaro waited by a tree, his eyes scanning the park until Shiho arrived, visibly sweaty from the relentless heat of the sun. He doubted that her straw hat would do much to shield her from the scorching rays, but he couldn't deny that it suited her perfectly. Shiho's mom had thought so too, joking that only pirate captains and Shiho could pull off that look. Unfortunately, Shiho easily got sunburned, so she was stuck wearing her gym jacket, which only made the heat worse. She wistfully wished she could have worn a sleeveless red vest instead, but Kotaro jokingly reminded her that they didn't have the copyright for that. As Kotaro and Shiho chatted, Ryuzaki watched them from a distance, a hint of envy in his eyes. Yuzuki and Kurari noticed his mood and asked what was wrong, but he brushed them off, claiming it was nothing. While the two girls ran off after him, Azusa lingered behind for a moment, making brief eye contact with Kotaro before she followed them. Later, Kotaro boarded the bus, scanning for his seat. Ryuzaki was sitting a few rows behind him. Shiho had wanted to sit next to Kotaro if the seats weren't assigned, but Kotaro, ever the realist, told her that they usually were. Sure enough, the teacher passed around a seating chart, and as if the plot gods had a hand in it, Shiho and Ryuzaki ended up seated next to each other. Shiho, almost expecting this, calmly approached the teacher and asked to be seated elsewhere, citing her motion sickness. Kotaro couldn't help but be impressed that Shiho managed to wriggle out of the situation on her own. As he watched Shiho's hair bounce around as she made her way to the front of the bus, he smiled. Azusa ended up sitting next to Kotaro. She immediately asked to switch places so she could have the window seat, revealing a cheeky, selfish side of her that Kotaro found oddly comforting. It was something he'd sorely missed. The bus ride was mostly quiet, but then Azusa suddenly broke the silence. She mentioned that Ryuzaki had been in a foul mood lately, not responding properly to conversations and carrying an air of hesitation. She asked if Kotaro knew why, hinting that it might have had something to do with his relationship with Shiho. Kotaro was taken aback that Azusa thought he and Shiho seemed that close. Azusa then revealed that there was actually a rumor going around the class. Apparently, Shiho was often seen stealing glances at Kotaro, and Ryuzaki had definitely noticed. Azusa had suspected for a while that Ryuzaki liked Shiho, not her. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, and she started questioning why she fell for Ryuzaki in the first place. Azusa then told Kotaro about an old legend: if you confessed to someone during camp, you were likely to succeed. She'd prepared for this moment, having prayed at a shrine, purchased a love charm, and even sought good luck from an online fortune teller. Kotaro offered her a gentle nudge of courage, but he couldn't shake the feeling that deep down, Azusa already knew she was walking toward inevitable heartbreak. While preparing for the class lunch, Hanakishi asked Kotaro if he knew how to cook, since he and Akira had supposedly never done it before. As they talked, Kotaro accidentally dropped an onion. Before he could pick it up, Shiho appeared and handed it to him. Kotaro was surprised to see her, but his friends told him that she'd been there the whole time. He asked her if she'd really been behind him all along, and she bashfully hid behind his back. Hanakishi and Ikura exchanged envious glances, clearly jealous of his close interaction with Shiho. Not long after, Ryuzaki and his harem arrived, and he shot Kotaro and Shiho a rather nasty glare. With a clap of his hands, he began assigning everyone their roles. He and Yuzuki were in charge of the actual cooking, with Kurari assisting them. He tasked Hanakishi and Ikura with cooking the rice, while he relegated Kotaro to the simple job of starting the fire. Then, Ryuzaki turned to Shiho, asking her to team up with Azusa to peel the vegetables, showing a level of concern for her safety that bordered on smothering. However, in what seemed like an act of rebellion or perhaps just to spite Ryuzaki, Shiho clung to Kotaro's arm, making sure that Ryuzaki saw her. Ryuzaki called Azusa over, and without a word, she joined Shiho to wash the vegetables. But when Shiho arrived with soap and a sponge, nearly soaking a potato with soap, Azusa quickly took over the cleaning and handed Shiho a peeler instead. Unfortunately, Shiho had never even heard of a peeler before. When Azusa asked if Shiho knew how to cook, Shiho confidently claimed that she did, saying she watched her mom cook every morning. Azusa, now facing quite the dilemma, didn't know how to solve it on her own. She hurried over to Kotaro, seeking his help. Kotaro pointed at Shiho, exclaiming that she couldn't do anything. Despite his concern that this might anger Ryuzaki, Azusa reassured him that something as minor as this wouldn't bother him at all. Thus, Azusa was moved to the fire-starting team with Kotaro. In the midst of all this, Kotaro noticed that Azusa no longer viewed Ryuzaki as an infallible figure, and he realized that this was a significant change. As they worked together, Shiho playfully called Azusa, Azusa Nyan, drawing a parallel to a certain twin-tailed little sister character. Azusa accepted the nickname with a smile before running off to prepare the vegetables. Shiho, unsure of what to do next, asked Kotaro for guidance. Since he had already started the fire, he told her that all she needed to do was add wood. However, standing near the fire nearly caused Shiho to burn up, so Kotaro gave her proper instructions to ensure she wouldn't hurt herself. At one point, Shiho got soot on her fingers after Kotaro forgot to give her gloves. As he looked around for a towel, Shiho playfully pretended to wipe her hands on his shirt instead. Suddenly, Ryuzaki stormed into the scene, visibly angry despite Azusa's earlier reassurance that he wouldn't be. He demanded to know what Shiho was doing there, clearly upset that she was involved even though he had told Kotaro to handle this on his own. Shiho turned away from Ryuzaki, clearly annoyed. As Yuzuki and Kurari arrived to find him, Ryuzaki reluctantly returned to the group. They all gathered to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Hanakishi thanked Yuzuki for the meal, though she pointed out that Ryuzaki had done most of the heavy lifting. Hanakishi enjoyed the meal so much that he asked for a second helping. Ryuzaki turned to Shiho, asking her opinion on the curry. Shiho remained silent, leaving Yuzuki and Kurari to chime in and explain how delicious it was. Ryuzaki was eager to hear Shiho's thoughts, but all she could muster was that it tasted ordinary. After finishing their meals, the group worked together to clean up their stations. Shiho joined Kotaro to help him with the firewood, which caught Ryuzaki's attention. Just as the tension was about to escalate, Azusa came to the rescue. She revealed that she had instructed Shiho to help Kotaro because she considered fire starting more challenging than peeling vegetables. Additionally, the firewood was too heavy for one person to handle alone. Azusa questioned why Ryuzaki had assigned Kotaro to the task by himself in the first place. 3 days before their test, Kotaro and Shiho were hunkered down for some serious study time in Kotaro's living room. Shiho was all set with her books spread out, and snacks neatly arranged on the side. Kotaro, freshly armed with juice from the kitchen, spotted Shiho on the couch, casually belting out a song with an ice cream stick as a makeshift microphone. Feeling the studying vibe slip away, Kotaro called out to her, handing her a glass of juice with a smile. He playfully warned that her ice cream would melt if she kept playing with it. Shiho blushed at the sight of the juice and Kotaro's grin, and she sweetly told him that he was as sweet as the ice cream. She went on to explain that she actually liked her ice cream a bit melted. Kotaro couldn't help but smile, realizing that Shiho had a point. Curious about Shiho's interests, Kotaro asked her about the baseball team she supported. Shiho's face lit up with excitement, as she revealed that her support for the team was actually all about the snacks. She explained that before meeting Kotaro, she was often alone and bored, filling her time by watching TV. At that time, Shiho discovered that the baseball team was sponsored by her favorite snack maker, which sparked her interest in the sport. Initially, she watched just to see the snacks in action, but soon, she found herself captivated by the players' dedication and hard work. Before she knew it, her casual viewing had turned into genuine enthusiasm for the game. Kotaro watched Shiho's innocent smile and her evident passion for snacks and baseball. Together, they enjoyed watching games, and Kotaro could feel her excitement and joy when the team won. In a sudden, playful move, Shiho shoved her ice cream towards Kotaro's mouth. Kotaro was taken aback, unable to speak as he processed the unexpected gesture. Shiho, with a hopeful glint in her eye, mentioned that she'd love to go to the stadium to watch a match live with him someday. Kotaro eagerly agreed, though his excitement was partly due to something Shiho hadn't even noticed. As their lips brushed against the melting ice cream, Kotaro experienced an unexpected thrill, a sort of indirect kiss. His heart raced, and his head spun as the moment etched itself into his memory. He knew that this simple, sweet gesture would linger with him for a long time to come. One day at school, Kotaro overheard a conversation among some students. One of them mentioned that Shiho was very cute, while another wondered if she was famous. The third student chimed in, saying that she was indeed well known, earning the nickname Ice Princess for her supposed habit of never smiling. Kotaro couldn't help but feel a pang of frustration as he listened. The rumors didn't match up with the Shiho he knew. To him, she wasn't an emotionless figure but someone who was genuinely cute and full of life. She laughed, got mad, and experienced all the ups and downs of being a teenager, but that was only because she felt at ease with Kotaro. He knew she only opened up and showed her true self when she was with him, and it hurt to hear others misjudging her. During their camping trip, Shiho was laughing so hard that tears were streaming down her face. Kotaro, initially worried, rushed over to check on her, only to realize that her tears were from laughing and blushing so intensely. Earlier, Kotaro had seen that dodgeball was on the activity list and, knowing he wasn't the best player, had felt a twinge of nervousness. Shiho, with her eyes sparkling with excitement, had come up to him and cheerfully expressed how much she was looking forward to seeing him play. She wished him luck, promising to root for him. Determined not to let her down, Kotaro felt a surge of motivation to perform well. As the second round of the dodgeball match began, Kotaro was fired up and ready to give it his all. The game kicked off with Ryuzaki holding the ball, his eyes locked on Kotaro. With a powerful throw, Ryuzaki sent the ball hurtling toward him. Kotaro braced himself to defend, but the ball zipped past his hands and struck him squarely in the stomach. The impact knocked Kotaro to the ground, leaving him writhing in pain and almost curled up like a ball. Shiho's eyes widened in shock as she saw Kotaro sprawled out, clearly in distress. His teammates were equally stunned, unable to believe that Kotaro was out on the very first throw. Kotaro, still wincing from the dodgeball hit, couldn't help but feel a twinge of annoyance as he saw Shiho laughing at his discomfort. However, Shiho quickly brushed off any concerns, explaining that her laughter felt refreshing and had energized her. She insisted that it was genuinely funny, and now she was more invigorated than ever. When the game shifted to the girls' team, Shiho stood up with newfound confidence. Smiling brightly, she declared that she was ready to show Kotaro what dodgeball was all about. Kotaro watched as Shiho approached her team, his concern mounting. He had never perceived Shiho as particularly athletic, and now, seeing her in the midst of the game, she appeared to be a bit out of her depth, like a child among adults. Despite her evident struggle, Shiho managed to hang in there until the last round, her survival seemingly a stroke of luck rather than skill. Kotaro glanced over at Ryuzaki, who was murmuring something under his breath. It struck Kotaro as insincere, a feigned encouragement rather than genuine support. Determined to give Shiho a boost, Kotaro leaned in and whispered, urging her to do her best in the final round. To his surprise, Shiho seemed to hear him clearly. She turned towards him, her eyes widening in recognition of his encouragement. A smile spread across her face, and a faint blush colored her cheeks. Kotaro was astonished by how in tune Shiho was with his feelings. Shiho, caught up in the moment, forgot that the dodgeball game was still in progress. The ball flew straight at her head, striking her with a sharp thud. Shiho was knocked out cold, and both Ryuzaki and Kotaro stood in shock. Ryuzaki's immediate reaction was one of panic. He screamed Shiho's name and rushed to her side. Kotaro, however, remained rooted to the spot, his concern tempered by the knowledge that it was only a rubber ball and should not have caused any serious harm. Ryuzaki knelt beside Shiho, anxiously asking if she was okay. Despite his outward show of concern, Shiho, aware of his true feelings, knew that his worry was not entirely genuine. Suddenly, Shiho got to her feet and walked over to Kotaro, her eyes brimming with tears. She clung to him, sobbing as she exaggerated the situation, asking him to call an ambulance despite the fact that her injury was minor and her distress was mostly an act. Ryuzaki stood there, stunned and heartbroken, as he watched Shiho affectionately hug and hold on to Kotaro. She whispered to Kotaro, suggesting they move to a quieter spot. They walked away from the commotion and stopped in a secluded area. Kotaro asked her if the ball had hit her nose, and Shiho began to cry more, claiming that the ball had been thrown so hard it broke her nose. Kotaro, though feeling a pang of sympathy, pointed out that she was exaggerating, as it was just a rubber ball, but he still felt bad for her. Kotaro gently took Shiho's soft hands in his own, offering to check where the ball had struck. As Shiho's eyes filled with tears and she blushed from Kotaro's genuine concern, she stared at him in silence. Kotaro reassured her that while it was important to get the injury looked at, it wasn't as serious as she had made it out to be. Shiho, with a cute smile, said that the pain had lessened significantly, making Kotaro laugh and tease that it was just a rubber ball. Ryuzaki approached them, trying to feign concern, but when he saw Kotaro and Shiho holding hands, he stopped in his tracks. Kotaro and Shiho turned to face him, and Kotaro quickly released Shiho's hand. Ryuzaki asked, his voice strained, if Shiho was okay. Kotaro, nervous under Ryozaki's intense gaze, assured him that she wasn't injured. Shiho's expression soured at Ryozaki's presence, and she tugged at Kotaro's shirt but remained silent. Ryuzaki, realizing he wasn't welcome, muttered an apology and left, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Kotaro observed the rare sight of Ryuzaki, usually so confident, now walking away with a heavy air of resignation. Kotaro sensed that the story was reaching a turning point. As the tension mounted, he wondered if Ryuzaki, the protagonist, would finally win Shiho's heart or if Kotaro, the mob character, would shift the course of their narrative.
Alright, that's a wrap for today. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. And if you're new here, sub before the algorithm forgets I exist. Drop your favorite moment in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.